I'm here with another small presentation about the hand trap dilemma, or with the extended title, and why Konami is designing cards around Ash Blossom and the whole Columbine Crossout situation and more. I couldn't think of a better title. I just like calling it the hand trap dilemma because it is always quite a conversation to have with them. So, start things off, we gotta learn. If you don't know what a hand trap is, or you're new to Yu-Gi-Oh, I'll start it off right here. It is the unofficial term used to describe cards that activate in the hand during either player's turns, or in some cases only during your opponent's turn, to disrupt whichever actions the turn player is doing. Now, some hand traps have a variety of effects, each designed to specifically stop certain effects in certain locations. Some stops from deck, some starts from graveyard, or they have just powerful effects in general. Some have lingering effects, Drone Lockbird, Dimension Shifter, Artifact Lancia, for example, all effect for the entire turn, or the end of the next turn for Shifter's case, or some have just a one-time use case per turn, like Ash Blossom and Ghost Bell. The only exceptions to the latter are the ones printed way back. I'm talking Effect Veiler, DD Crow, and the first ever hand trap, Karibo. That's my boy. Now, there's also some that are in archetype or type specific, like Miscellaneous Saurus for dinosaurs specifically, Necroz Trishula specifically for the Necroz archetype, or fucking Telementavenus. Now, what are they supposed to do exactly? Well, they're supposed to be used to be dealt in one-for-one interactions. They're meant to be and or feel powerful enough to stop your opponent's actions. A card for a card should be a fair trade, right? Your opponent activates Bonfire, right? You both start with 5 cards. Your opponent activates Bonfire, you activate Ash Blossom, chain it, right? You're now down to 4 cards. That should be a fair trade, right? Well, there are hand trap hates. Most moderately, Call by the Grave and Crossout Designator are supposed to help players getting hand trap be able to continue your actions. You should, in theory, be down in card advantage when you're actually plus. Think of UI Goku's Light Jab and hit stun. He gets out of frame them, and that's stupid, right? So your opponent goes chain Crossout, they banish an Ash Blossom, right? And now they are able to continue resolving the effect of Bonfire, getting a Snake Eyes Ash, for example. So now, while they be down 2 cards, right? Your opponent banished an Ash, and they use Crossout, they're still at 4 cards while you're at 4 cards as well. Now, they've been a necessity to keep the rampart amount of hand traps in check, because now we play a mini game with them due to modern archetype design. Recent modern archetype designs have been so crazy that most decks can play through nearly everything, of course. Not exactly everything, but nearly everything. Remember, think of Called By and Crossout as an assist in your fighting game. They block your DP, but your assist bails you out in this sense. You can keep playing. Or in this sense, Crossout and Called By let you keep comboing. Now, the Ash Blossom case, of course, one of the best hand traps in the game since its release, negating cards since 2017. Shout out Maximum Crisis. It had all the True Draco stuff. That's basic. And Zark, shout out to that. It is really good in so many matchups. Understand, Ash Blossom is universal and it stops so much. And it addresses 3 or 4 in the OCG of the elephants in the meta: the Molch Army, Perulia, Fuelos, and Mialis, and Maxine the OCG, making her crucial in that mini game. If at any point your opponent drops those cards on you, and you have Ash, it helps stop the mini game. But if you don't have Ash, and by extension Called By Crossout, it comes down to how many cards are you willing to give your opponent. 1, 2, 0? That is up for you to decide. But recently, for the past 2-3 years or so, Konami has been designing cards that are centered around playing around Ash Blossom. Why is that? Well, let's look at some cards that ignore it. For example, I have 4 cards here shown. Lo, Prayers of the Voiceless Voice, Dragon Tail or Grula, which just released recently in Japan in deck build pack Justice Hunters, Maiden of White, and Lady Labyrinth of the Silver Castle. Each of their main effects here dodge Ash Blossom, and while yes, you can use other methods to stop their effects, for example, Valor and Imperm, some have built-in protection or are awarded to essentially dodge effects. Maiden of White is the easiest one from here. All she says, you can place True Light from your deck or hand or graveyard face up in your spawn trap zones. Now, Maiden must meet Lady Lab cannot be targeted if you have a set card. Because of that, you can't use Valor or Imperm when she activates her effect to set a normal trap straight from your deck. Low, well, she can be Valor Imperm if that is the normal summon. If properly done, you could have another continuous spell, one of the continuous spell traps, and the Skull Guardian, where your light monsters cannot be targeted. And of course, the Dragon Tail monster, that kind of looks like a wolf, but it's a dragon, sets any Dragon Tail spells traps if it's used as fusion material and when sent to the graveyard. Now, keywords here: Maiden places, Lady Labyrinth sets, Low places, the Dragon Tail monster sets. None of those effects can be hit by Ash Blossom. There's also a few things. All of them dodge Ash Blossom. But of course, there's other ways for it to be stopped. If you have Omni Negates, of course, there's Call by Crossout if you're already set up. Or if you're going second, you do have other options. There's also that Diabelle's monster that forces your opponent to set things, but that doesn't matter, right? So, what's going on? Ash Blossom's losing targets, despite the fact there's dozens of cards trying to equalize. For the low risk, low reward kind of stuff, you go 1 for 1, you're both down to 4 cards essentially. And that's okay, right? It should be treated as a fair card that everyone's allowed to use. It got multiple reprints. It used to be like $30-something for the Legendary Kaiba Collection Ultra. That sucked. Right, price is always a big thing in card games, right? It should be a card that doesn't change the game state, but lessens it, being able to trade fairly with other cards. And there's also been talk about banning Ash Blossom, which would be catastrophic. It'd be funny though, but it'd be catastrophic. So what's wrong with hand traps? Well, decks can kind of just play through them or around them. Now, recent decks have been able to play through multiple have been designed to have multiple 1-card starters to get their plays going for a recent while. Now, that's not to say that all decks are created equally, but for example, Snake Eyes. I fucking hate Snake Eyes. I was tired of that format for a bit. When they didn't have full power, Snake Eyes had so much interaction, so many starters that they could theory play through. If your opponent opened 5 hand traps, they could have, in theory, played through enough of those. Understand, any of the following cards led to full Snake Eye combo if they were not stopped, which was Bonfire, Diabelle Star, Wanted, Ash, Poplar, and Original Sinful Spoils, for example. But assuming you had a playset of each of them, 15 and any of the following 15 cards, 15 1-card starters. That means you play 25 non-engine and whatever else cards that was part of an archetype. So let's say there's 22 you're playing for in-engine stuff. And then you have 18 spaces of non-engine. Any combination of those 5 plus the 18 non-engine that you had, it almost felt like you're hoping that your opponent you're praying that you had more starters than your opponent had hand traps. Now, again, this isn't to say all decks can play through any hand traps. Dark World, my favorite deck, my beloved, doesn't run any at all. And they have to rely on external ways through the use of their extra deck, or despite how toxic it is, they hand rip people with the effect of Silver, manipulating certain effects that forces you to discard them and get their bonus trigger effects. Now, they could play through 1 to 2, right? But Dark Worlds don't have any true one-card starters because of that. If any of their plays stopped, if they get hand trapped at the crucial point, it's basically over. Again, some decks have main game plans that have very crucial choke points that basically says, please use Ash Blossom here you saw in a YouTube combo video and their turn ends. Now, decks can just like play through that. If they get Ash, that's fine. They have other backup plans. The idea is you want to have your deck built around multiple game plans, not just one big game plan. If game plan A gets negated, well, you go to game plan B and go through that. If plan B gets negated, you go to C, and so on and so forth. Well, there's also Call By and Crossout, of course. Two of the most polarizing cards in the current meta. Two cards that outright negate certain hand traps, or if you're playing a mirror, for example, right? If you know where your opponent's on, you can just hit certain cards as well. Like, say you're on Fiendsmith Rising and your opponent's on Fiendsmith Rising. You have Call By and Crossout in your hand. At any point, they go track. You can flip Crossout and declare tracked, for example. Now, they are get out for jail free cards for the turn player. Call By especially feels very sacky at any point. It's not at 0 or 3, because if Call By is at 3, everyone's playing Call By at 3. You don't understand. If Call By ever goes up from 1 to 2 or 3, it will immediately be slotted in, because that is extra ways to stop hand traps. Not only that, but meta decks can use it better than rogue decks, which is unfortunate, because that means going first is much better than going second in a lot of cases, except the going second decks, of course, like Tenpai. Now, are they healthy for the game? Kinda not. The idea is that there are certain cards that are game warping on their own, like Maxine Dimension Shifter. Because of that, we need to have some answers to them, of course, like Crossout and Call By. No one wants to get fucking Maxine. No one wants to get played by Dimension Shifter. Right? They're horrible to play into and against. Now, if they weren't around, we should probably get rid of them or limit them at the bare minimum, which means, because if we do, that means we can prioritize on better deck building, adapting to other game plans, like I said earlier, and being mindful with our hand traps. That means we don't have to slot in at 18 plus and pray you can win the hand trap war, like throwing damn snowballs at someone. So what's the fix? Well, it's not likely, but it means Konami has to design decks that aren't unserved enough to play through multiple hand traps. Snake Eyes, while one's the best answer, of course, could play through almost everything if they had everything. It also means we designing the decks to have more in-engine interactions, of course. You want to create decks that have powerful monsters that can create that one-to-one interaction without the use of hand traps. Yes, the use of hand traps is very helpful, right? But if your deck has to rely on multiple hand traps to play through on top of, well, not making the greatest end boards, then it just doesn't feel fair. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Hasn't been fair for God knows how long, of course, but at the bare minimum, these hand traps should feel fair. Now, that would also mean previous decks in theory would have a much better power ceiling than the new ones, of course. Like, for example, if we design a deck that has a lot more in-engine stuff that you have to play, while they don't have a lot of good endboard stuff, things like Razio and Malice could just play through that stuff. But that means we have the ban list for a reason. Of course, things will get hit if deemed unhealthy for the meta. Alter Entity as I thought was not fun. Rongo Miniat format. Oh man, making a 5-mount Rongo Miniat, tell your opponent you cannot play. They will be banned. They will get hit and they will be banned if we complain hard enough, or if Konami wants us to buy a shiny new card. Or remember, Konami at the end of the day is a business and they want your money. You are definitely going to be buying those prices if you have to, if you're one of those professional players. And finally, we need to have hand traps stay relevant for one-on-one interactions for future decks, meaning banning the cards to prevent such interactions. That prevents those from happening, called by Crossout, means they should be hit. While also, please ban fucking Dimension Shifter. I fucking hate that card. God, good riddance, man. So in conclusion, at the end of the day, none of us are part of Konami's R&D team, and as such, we can't really expect major changes in terms of future deck design to happen unless they decide, you know what, let's have some chaos, of course. Now, remember, hand traps have been powerful for whatever use cases they have. Ash for negating branded fusion, for example, or Maxi, or Bonfire. I can go on, but you get the point. They have been good, and they should stay good, because if hand traps aren't in the meta, then everyone will be playing FTKs. Understand? Again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you guys in another video when I make the LeBron one.